It's an important day, guys.
Yeah, it's first day of the work
Allegedly,
week.
because you guys know I'm not aware of this world, but I've been sped up to the fact that this was the day that Barry Jackson was back from Hackergate.
It's very,
You saw
very
that news
disturbing
over the
turn.
wires.
No, I again, this is allegedly. This is word of mouth. I'm sped up, but yeah, I may or may not have been read thank the Academy.
I think he can.
Thank you for reading it.
He can
I'm
confirm.
saying I did not read it. I heard it read aloud to me.
Thank you.
Per league source.
So just to get
Yeah, it was per league source.
some housekeeping stuff out of the way. So is Ingold okay with his stinger?
Yeah, no, he's doing all right. It'll be a day to day for him as we'll work through the week. But he's a warrior and came back in the game.
Of course, Sanders, Andrew Meyer, James Daniels are the last three. It could be designated any this week. Would you anticipate among those three?
I'm anticipating your need for patience. Okay, so we might take a week off before we jump back into the window openings.
How did, go ahead.
I want to get your thoughts on Austin Jackson's first game back. Maybe a pressure or two allowed, but really strong in the running game, I thought.
Yeah, I think he's a value adder to just game day experience in general. He had a mindset of violence that we were counting on. So we put him in a point of attack for a ton of things, and we kind of measured our expectations. I spent a good portion of last week kind of trying to prepare him for the inherent frustration that is, he has high standards, so there'd be some things that invariably would be a little off. There's a consequence for that amount of time missed, but overall, he probably exceeded my expectations to a degree, and made us a better football team with his tonality, his aggressive conviction, and his competitiveness, because he's trying to he fits into the style of ball that we've been playing, where a convicted, aggressive approach that is less about perfection and more about conviction.
I was going to ask you how AJ and Darren Waller came out of the game physically, given it was their first action in a while.
So, no news is good news. I think bodies are inherently sore, but beyond that, it was positive. There was no regression.
You guys went to Darren Waller early in the game, and he still ended up leading the team in yards. I guess what was behind kind of the early push, but then he didn't. I guess he got a target in the end zone, but not much outside of that.
There's a lot of things going on in the whether there was times he was the primary, and we progressed because he was taken away. They get the memo too. They started the game completely committed to getting hands on Waddle and left him a little vulnerable. They made some corrections. We actually got I think two. Yeah, there was two explosive plays. One to Waddle, one to Greg, that he was the primary, but they overcooked their coverage on him, kind of overcommitted to him. So, that's kind of the way the football bounces sometimes. It can come in bunches, but the biggest thing was that he was a value-added threat on the field the entire time, and also did a pretty good job with his blocking assignments and staying connected with some defenders. So, I think defenses know every time he's on the field, based upon, probably the Carolina game on, and so he gives us a huge effect whether he has the ball or not. But I would venture to say that's about as conservative as I can be in a game plan to not overstress him, and which is a challenge that I was proud of myself for because he's again no setbacks.
Coach, we saw the tangible impact of Minka Fitzpatrick yesterday with the playmaking ability, but 99% of the snaps at that position are intangible plays that you don't see on the stat sheet. I'm curious if you could take us through the value he provides from playing so many positions in a zone-heavy defense and how it's all connected through things that he does at a high level.
Well, I think he's playing from 15 yards from the football or 5 yards from the football. He's from an identification standpoint, whether he's a safety or a nickel, that's something teams have to prepare for. But they have to prepare for a football player that he had production on blitzes, he had production on zone drop tackles. He's a aggressive communicator, and really through the whole secondary, he's the guy that his peers. He garners a ton of respect from, and so I think the discipline and really it's probably just the discipline and the connectivity of the secondary. I can do a bunch of pats on the back of him and give him his due credit because he really. From the day he got here, he showed guys what it was like to be not just a pro, but a pro with an established name in this league that still approaches every day like he's a guy earning his name. I think I can't say enough about a safety that can match up with a slot receiver and take an appropriate angle to have a game-winning safety on a 2-point conversion. But on top of that, he was able to he was disguising some things. There was a PBU that T-Dot had that I would partially give Minka the credit because of his disguise and detail that kind of showed the quarterback one thing, so he kind of bit the cheese and went away from him, and then T-Dot was able to make the play. So monumental contribution week in, week out that doesn't always stat sheet doesn't really give it its due, but he was able to kind of exemplify with his plays on the ball this past game of really what he means to this defense and this team each and every week.
Mike, sticking with that 2-point conversion, we found out after the game yesterday that there were issues. You talked about that, issues with the communication system and all. How much of thinking on the fly did Dotson have to do at that point? And is that why he's the guy with the good dot?
So he showed why this past game, but I just told him before our team meeting that I've been around. I'm much older than most people pin me for, and I've been in this league for 20 years, and in the most complimentary way I could possibly imagine, it felt like the way that Fred Warner was prepared week in, week out. That's what it felt like. He made a defensive call on the 2-point conversion because he was prepared, because he thought about all critical scenarios. And in this game plan, what's the best call if the headset goes out? That is not something that he just realized in the heat of battle. He probably doesn't make the sound decision. It was we was deciding between two calls, and he picked one of the calls he was deciding between. So being on the same page, and we say it all the time, like, there's no such thing as the perfect call. The perfect call is the supreme execution unilaterally from 11 players. That makes the perfect call. whether it's blitz or coverage. I think just being tied together, 11 as one, that's what good defense is. So, I commend him. The team's counting on him to be the most prepared player, and I think he showed that he was. It wasn't just that play. There was a play in particular. He called out a run play when the team was aligned and empty. So he saw the alignment of players and anticipated the motion back from empty to have the halfback come in the backfield, and was dead right. Those types of things have residuals of conviction of all your teammates, which there's plenty of people, starting with Weave, but there's plenty of people to commend for. I think the last 3 games were top 3 in the league in points given up. And there's plenty of people that are responsible for that, but he's high on the list because he is the quarterback of the defense. So he has to communicate. Any failure in communication leads to failure in execution. So very proud of this past game, particularly for him, not just with I think he had 8 tackles, and he had PBU and not just the stat sheet stuff though. For 60 plays of defense that was highly orchestrated and connected and coordinated. He deserves the praise as much as, and has earned the praise as much as anybody on the defense or coaching the defense.
Going.
I want to go back to the end of the first half sequence yesterday. After the Rasul Douglas interception, I take over 42-108 on the clock. Why the decision to bleed clock and then settle for the long field goal? I think a lot of fans wanted to see the team be more aggressive.
Why would you think that? So like this goes back to the really the first time I was introduced to the philosophy was in the 2000s. And I think the Patriots kind of made it famous, but you've noticed a lot of teams defer the decision so that they could get the ball after the half. Well, that's under the pretense that you end the half with the ball or points, because you keep a team from a possession. We started with the ball, but the same idea is you try to end the half with points or the ball so that they don't get the opportunity. I probably that decision was a lot easier for me when the ball was on the 30-yard line because of Riley pregame. But on top of that, you look at the National Football League. I think there's about 18 seconds, and there's been 2 times this year that a team has, with no timeouts, been able to have a running clock situation, 18 seconds or less, have a play, run the field goal team on, and get the points. So then at the 30-yard line, I'm looking at like, all right, do we need the 5, 6, 7 yards, or are we taking an unnecessary risk? In my opinion, I thought another snap was an unnecessary risk based upon Riley's pregame and the conviction he gave me through Ock and Jake, to get points at the half. Thought Tua did a good job transitioning to slow clock, but that's why we bled out. We were on the 30-yard line with no timeouts and high risk with little reward. That's what I thought.
Mike, you guys have fought your way into the in the hunt conversation, as people like to talk about it. No matter how far or close you guys are in that, do you want the guys to have that be a topic of conversation, to be energized by that?
No, I just want them to trust me that we beat the next opponent, and that gives that's the only thing that matters. It happens every year, but there's a lot of, all right, this team's winning the division, this team's a wild card. If you're not mathematically eliminated, the best thing to do is worry about your game and beating the next opponent. Does it matter where we're at if we're a little less concerned about the next opponent and more like pumped up that we're not mathematically eliminated? We're not. We have 7 losses, and we have 1 opponent that we can affect. So I don't like talking about all of that stuff simply because it waters down your focus. And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but end of November, December football, there's always these check boxes that people, you see the schedule of the this team's playing this team, oh, they're going to win, and it doesn't always work out that way. I think a couple teams had that occur to them just yesterday, and that's because it's all about matchups. There's a lot of parity in this league. Typically, they're 1-score games, and every single inch, yard situation, if your focus isn't completely on that one opponent, you're going to end up in the land of regret and woulda, coulda, shoulda. As a team, we're not really afforded that. We kind of used up those bullets at the beginning of the season, so it's that much more important to me that there's one game that exists, regardless of, I think I told to the players today that family members want to talk about a game after this or where you are in the hunt, put some headphones on, and with all due respect, just because it's doesn't do anything for you, and there's so much season that can occur, and there's so many different things that take place that as long as you're not mathematically eliminated, you should be trying to beat the next opponent so you can stay in that not mathematically eliminated focus and let the cards play.
Darrell Bevel last week described Tua's season as up and down. Is there anything mechanically that you and Bev have identified that you think Tua's doing differently from the previous 3 seasons in terms of footwork or something that he needs to get back to?
Yeah, I think that's the key is you're first and foremost as the quarterback of the team. His job is to lead us to victory, and there's so many things that go into that, and we're always looking at. I think to admit, and I'd admit too, it wasn't his best game, and so you're trying to find why and correlates and improve it so that he can have his best game when his best game is required, and we can continue to win. There's different things that we work on week in, week out. Ultimately, he's trying to improve his performance. We're trying to improve how we coach him, and collectively, as a team, we're trying to win football games. And if 300 yards passing is necessary for that, that's what we're gonna have to lean on and expect, and coach him to do so. If 150 yards can get the W, he's in a true leadership position where you're National Football League as a starting quarterback. You're going to get held accountable by anybody and everybody that has a set of eyes week in, week out. Sometimes you're going to play well relatively to your other games, and that's awesome as long as it includes a win. And the winning formula for us is playing convicted football that's complementary. And what we'll do is continue to push in that direction. I think like every other player on the team, nobody's satisfied with their play. You can't be, otherwise it's going to get worse. You have to improve. And, I think case in point, a leader, if not the leader of the football team, has to exemplify that win, lose, or draw. But in a win, you accept whatever happens, and you move forward so that your play can be part of the reason why you get another win. And setting that example is important for the rest of the team to follow.
Thanks.